Lauren, on Thursday night, who will the 49ers be selecting with the third overall pick? That and much, much more today on 2 Point Stance. Thank you for tuning into episode 1 of the Football Guys' newest show, 2 Point Stance. I am Dave Kluge, and I am here with the new Football Guys staffer and my co host, Lauren Carpenter. Lauren, who do you think the 49ers are going to be selecting on Thursday night?
I am going to break the hearts of everybody and ruin not one, but two tight ends for fantasy in
Oh,
2021 with the
no.
third pick in the 2021 NFL draft. The San Francisco 49ers select Kyle Pitts. Why not? Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's just ruin George Kittle and Kyle Pitts and cry.
It would make a little bit of sense. I can kind of see it, them trading up and then all these smoke and mirrors making it seem like they're interested in pretty much
We want a
every single
quarterback.
quarterback. Yeah, and just screw everybody over. George Kittle
Yeah.
managers, Kyle Pitts managers. I can see it happening. Why not?
Oh my God, could you imagine the Twitter reaction after that happens? Like the wailing and gnashing of teeth, the lamenting, the crying. Oh wait, that'll just be me. But hey, whatever.
That's
Who
just gonna
knows? Weirder
happen.
things have happened.
It's really going to happen regardless of who gets drafted, but Kyle Pitts would definitely put a fork in it.
Terrible.
I personally, I mean, I think that we're seeing a lot of smoke and mirrors from the 49ers cap. They gave up a lot of draft capital, and I don't think that you give up that much if you just are okay taking anybody available, which is kind of strange to me. So I don't really trust any reports that are coming out of their camp right now. I think that if they were to say, hey, we traded up to the third pick and we want X player, I think that would make the Jets immediately start rethinking their decision. So if they came out and said, hey, we want Mac Jones 100%, then the Jets would be like, what do they see in Mac Jones that we don't? And maybe start to reevaluate. So it's really tough for me to gauge exactly what's going on. But I think that it is going to be Justin Fields personally. I have said that on Twitter for the last couple of weeks now. That was the immediate knee-jerk reaction. And it just makes so much sense to have a big physical quarterback that can move the pocket and run and really do what Kyle Shanahan wants, which is keep the ball on the ground. So that's kind of what I expect. For me, Mac Jones just kind of feels like Jimmy Garoppolo 2.0, and we saw how that experiment worked out. So I think they're going to be going a completely different route.
I can see that happening. I can also see Mac Jones happening. The third pick in the draft is always super pivotal anyway, and it's really going to determine the rest of the draft is really where that third pick kind of falls. So it'll be very interesting to see what it is they decide to do. And full disclosure, I do not hope that they take Kyle Pitts. That was just to be super cantankerous on a
I mean,
Tuesday.
I love it because that's going to get people really fired up.
I
Just
know.
for
Why
which would be great. I mean, Jordan Reed just did retire, so maybe we're onto something here.
I know
If
that's
anybody called it, we will
true.
be sure to clip this and be like, "Hey, Lauren called it."
Oh, I
She
totally called. Oh my
Ian
God, I hope I
Rappaport,
didn't.
after everyone.
Everyone will hate me because I was the one that put it out into like the atmosphere.
And honestly,
No.
with them not knowing who they're picking, it also makes the other spots. I've heard Atlanta talking about wanting to trade out of 4, but right now I can't imagine any team wanting to trade up to the 4th spot because pretty much what you're getting is the 4th best quarterback that's available. And who's going to give up draft capital to say, hey, we'll take the scraps of whoever's left over? So I think that we're going to see a lot of draft night trades based on who's available. If San Francisco does end up taking Mac Jones and Trey Lance and Justin Fields are still available at 4, that spot is worth 100 times more than it is today with all the question marks surrounding it. So that's when I could see a team like the Patriots or Washington or Chicago or Denver starting to get on the horn and make the call to move up then.
It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Anyway, Lauren, I'm very excited about this show. We've been talking about putting this together for a little while now. You and I met very, very early on when I started in Twitter. I was brand new to the Twitter streets out here, and I saw you on my timeline consistently doing videos. And you had just gotten the role at Fantasy Pros, actually, when I started, and I reached out, congratulated you. And then we just did a show a few weeks ago. You came on our Friday show, and we had a great time on there. And immediately I said, we need to have a show together. So we're going to focus on news and transactions around the league and how that affects redraft fantasy football leagues. What else should our viewers expect from this show?
Well, Dave, it's going to be a lot of overwhelming the masses with big words and numbers. So I sound smart. No, I'm just kidding. It's football. We're going to talk football. So, I mean, right now it's kind of like, well, the draft is in 2 days, 3 days. What day is it? It's Tuesday, right? I'm still in that place where I don't know what day it is or the date or the month.
Point stance.
I just realized
in the name, but
I know we don't. So Tuesdays, I used to hate Tuesdays too, by the way, but now they're my favorite day of the week because of this podcast. So I'm super excited about it. I also just realized my husband's birthday is in less than a month and I'm not prepared. That's how bad I am with my time right now, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, football, and it's going to be fun.
Time really gets away from you this time
It
of year. I
does.
thought the season ended like a month ago, and somehow we're already approaching the end of April. It's crazy, but I think for this show, what we'll be doing out of season, we're going to be taking whatever news is available. Which this week really isn't a lot. We've got some draft stuff that we can talk about. We've got some weird trade rumors that are going around. But I'm happy that we picked this week to launch the show because we can get to feel it out a little bit, kind of give everyone an expectation for the rest of the season. But during the season, that's when we're going to be having a lot of fun. And that's why I wanted this Tuesday spot specifically, because we'll get to do full recaps of the previous week and we'll have a lot to talk about then. So I don't want to pigeon this whole into being a waiver wire show because there are so many, but we'll be talking about players that are on the move going up and down, players that are on the waiver wire, players that you should think about cutting. We'll just basically be diving into the previous week. There were so many players last year that I would have loved to have this show on that we would have been able to talk about, guys like Jacoby Myers and Justin Herbert and James Robinson and these really tantalizing names that were popping up out of nowhere and you weren't sure what to do with. Those guys are going to pop up again this year, and tune in on Tuesday because we will be covering them all.
And you'll also be hearing me either celebrating or crying because I always do that, right? On Tuesday, it's like, I love fantasy football. It's like, I hate fantasy football. Why do I do this? And then Thursday, you're like, all right, who's up next? It's the insanity of this fun industry that we're in. So it's going to be good.
It's going to be an emotionally driven show. Doing it on Tuesday morning.
Emotionally driven or emotionally draining? Which one? I don't know. Probably both. Way.
Yeah, there's going to be at least one Friday where you and I are going to suffer like a brutal Monday night loss. And we're both just going to be sitting here head down, which speaking of, I should be hanging my head down today. My clippers messed up on me today. And I shaved a big bald patch right here in my beard. So we'll keep the heads down for today.
Chin down. I have this lock of hair that wants to just fall right in my face. Of course, now that I've just done it, it was hiding very nicely. Now that I just did that, it's going to be coming back to haunt me. But for like peek behind the curtain, for anyone who doesn't do podcasts, okay, or like video casts, I should say, this is not what we actually look like without like a light and a camera in our faces. So I look like a clown when I walk by a mirror because I have a lot of makeup on. And my hair kind of looks okay, sort of looks like I stuck my finger in a light socket, but it actually looks like I have a head of Shirley Temple when I get up from this chair and walk IRL in real life. So these things happen. Just keep your chin down. I'll warn you. I'll be like, whoa, bald spot. Maybe I'll be more subtle than that. I'll be like, or maybe we'll have like a safe word, like chin. not obvious.
Yeah, yeah, the first thing I do after every single show is immediately wash all of the hairspray out of my hair. But something else that we're going to be doing on this show, and I'm really excited about this, at the end of every show, Lauren, you and I both, you, like I said, we met when I was very early on Twitter, and you've been a supporter of me, sharing my content from day one. And I think that that's what makes this industry so great, is helping people rise up. So we're going to be signing off every single show with the Footballguys Spotlight. We really want to hear new voices in this community. So every single week, we're going to shout out an up-and-comer in the industry that you should be dropping or watching closely. And we're going to drop that at the end of each show. So be sure to stick around this week to see who we're going to be shouting out. But anyway, welcome to the audience. We're thrilled to do this. Let's dive into some football talk. So there's some talk that the Raiders are interested in trading up for a quarterback this year. Just like just about every single team with 5-6 good quarterbacks available. It seems like a lot of teams want to trade up, but they're saying that a rookie would end up sitting behind Derek Carr for a while. However, for the sake of conversation, let's pretend that Derek Carr was going to get traded because there isn't a lot of real hard-hitting news this year. So if Derek Carr was to get traded, what teams should be interested in trying to make a move for him, Lauren?
No one should be interested in actively pursuing. I'm kidding, Dave. I mean, he's okay, right? But you know what? He's a lot better than Andy Dalton, I think. So the Bears are one that pops in my head first. The other one is really sad and horrible for me to say, and I feel like a horrible person when I say it. But the Broncos. No, I love Drew Lock. I love Drew Lock so much. And for anybody who doesn't know, I graduated from Mizzou, so I have a extreme partiality when it comes to Mizzou alum, which he is. I know, I get it. I whatever. I still think he's One more year. Just give him one more year. But yeah,
So how
Broncos
long did you
and
hold on to Doral Green Beckham? Did that Mizzou alum keep you drafting him? Because I went after Doral Green Beckham for a long time. Sometimes you got to know
yeah.
when to just kick it to the curb.
No one to hold him, no one to fold him. I get that one. Not as much as Drew Lock, I think. I don't know why. Maybe because it's a quarterback position. I don't know. He's like kind of spicy. I'm not sure. But I think he has a lot of potential that has yet to be unleashed.
I think
I
that if
need
they
that
are planning
gif
to
that
move
has
on,
the glitter. Like
I know exactly which one you're talking about. The magic. And Derek Carr, he's kind of that like just baseline quarterback where like if your quarterback is better than Derek Carr, you're probably in a pretty good spot. And if your quarterback is worse than Derek Carr, you're probably looking to move on. And he's that
yeah.
kind of guy right in the middle. So I think that he's just going to end up being the consolation prize for whatever team is unable to move up in the draft. The two teams that jump out to me that are going to be unable to move up in the draft, the Bears, which you just mentioned. For anybody who hasn't seen one of my shows before, you can see the picture of my wife and I here at Soldier Field, along with the signed Jay Cutler helmet. I'm obviously a Bears fan. The one thing that scares me about the Bears, though, is yes, they have Andy Dalton, but they also still have Nick Foles. Right now, between Andy Dalton and Nick Foles, they have an $18 million committed to their quarterback position. So for them to bring in Derek Carr would almost double that. Scares me just a little bit, but Washington, they just made the move for Fitzpatrick, which is great, but I don't think that he's going to be a long-term option. So Derek Carr is somebody who's slightly younger that can help them out. I like the idea that you said about Denver too. The only thing I can see them being a little bit trepidatious about would be trading him into the division because really Denver is just a quarterback away from being a great team. And I
Watch it
feel like
now.
you hear people say it all the time, but it's true. I mean, they've got all of the playmakers. Speaking of, they just said this morning that Melvin Gordon, they're thinking about making him a bell cow in 2021, which would be great for his fantasy value. You got Cortland Sutton coming back off an ACL tear, who is like my favorite guy in the league right now. I don't think I've made it out of a single best ball draft without Cortland Sutton. Noah Fant kind of showed his potential last year. Jerry Jeudy getting some pressure off of him with Sutton. I mean, that team is
Yes.
a quarterback away from being a great team. So, is there anybody else you can see possibly trying to make a move for Derek Carr besides the teams that you
No, I'm
mentioned?
still on your double repetition of one quarterback away. I get it. Okay. I
It's
get
true.
it.
It's true. So Justin Fields, we already talked about him going to San Francisco, which I would love to see. But if Denver can find a way to land Justin Fields, immediate favorite in that conference, I would love to see
That's
it.
true. I don't mind that too
Now
much.
let's talk about another trade rumor going around, and this name is a little bit more exciting than Derek Carr. Ian Rappaport just yesterday said that the Falcons have been receiving calls about Julio Jones. Matt Ryan is 35 years old. Julio Jones is 32 years old. And the Falcons right now are sitting on that fourth overall pick where they can draft the next future of their franchise. So, do you think that we're going to see some sort of change of guard possibly where they just decide to dump ship on everybody and trade Julio Jones? If so, where would you want to see Julio Jones play next year?
Oh my God, I don't know. Like, this is so weird. I cannot imagine Julio Jones in any other jersey. Like, that is weird to me. Not surprising, but also very surprising. I'm out of this one. I'm not even going to give an opinion because I don't even know what I want. So I have no idea. But if I'm a dynasty person right now, which I am with Julio Jones, I know he's old. Get over it. This is how I play dynasty. Be kind of freaking out right now. I don't know. Like there's places that need a really good wide receiver. One of them is Detroit, but I wouldn't want to go to Detroit like if I were Julio Jones.
At 32
Sucks.
years old, go to Detroit, and now you're
No.
playing with Jared Goff behind a decimated line with no other weapons. Yeah, I
No.
don't think that's what he wants.
Barf.
So I was ringing the bell when Kenny Galladay was obviously a free agent and everyone was saying he was between Chicago and the Giants. I was ringing the bell saying that I wanted him to go to the Ravens. And first of all, it would absolutely kill his fantasy value. I didn't want
Yeah.
Kenny Galladay to go to the Ravens because it would be a good fantasy asset for him. I wanted to see it for the great football. It would have helped Lamar Jackson
Nobody
tremendously.
cares
That's
about real
exactly what
football here, Dave. It's all
I care
fantasy.
about real football. And I also care
Oh.
about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, I think, is just been so underrated. I'm expecting a bounce back for him. And I love what they did with Sammy Watkins. I feel like Sammy Watkins is the exact type of player that they needed, a big bodied guy that can catch balls outside the number. That's great. That's what they needed. But Julio Jones would just be a massive upgrade from that. You get the yards after the catch, you'd get a huge frame, and it would put him in a position where he could possibly win a ring. So I could see I don't expect Julio Jones to get traded just because, like you said, like hurts your brain trying to imagine
It
Julio Jones
does.
in
It's
any
painful.
jersey besides Falcons. But if I had to
It's
see him
weird.
somewhere, in
Okay, so
Baltimore.
my buddy Mark Drumheller in the comments here, he did bring up Green Bay. That would actually be pretty awesome. That would be
It would be.
a good trade there. Hi everybody in the comments as well. How are you
Hello,
all?
everyone.
Mwah,
Nice
mwah,
seeing you.
mwah.
You all show up today, and I like that for fantasy purposes. I mean, Devontae Adams league, fantasy managers would be furious, but it would be great for Aaron Rodgers. It would be great for the Packers. But historically, we don't see the Packers go out and make moves like that in free agency. This free agent class was loaded with Will Fuller and Juju Smith-Schuster and Curtis Samuel and even Sammy Watkins that we just talked about. Kenny Galladay. There were so many names that made perfect sense. Like the Packers just go out and get any one of these guys, and you are instantly one of the best offenses in the NFL. They could have done it last year in a loaded receiver class. Imagine if they drafted Justin Jefferson instead of Jordan Love.
Oh, Lord
Got one
have
of those top
mercy.
wide receivers. And instead they took a backup quarterback. And then second round comes around. There's still a lot of good receivers available. And you draft AJ Dillon. In hindsight, the AJ Dillon move makes sense because now they've got a good change of pace, complimentary back to Aaron Jones. But overall, yeah, I'd like to see Julio in Green Bay too. I mean, the 1-2 punch of Devontae Adams and Julio Jones would be historic, just
Yeah.
monumental, like nothing we've ever seen before.
I mean, who would be the wide receiver too in that category? It would have to be Julio Jones, right?
I think given his age, yeah, and this is kind of that's more of that. I don't even know if you'd say a 1A and a 1B. It's like a
Right.
1AA and a 1AB. Like you can't
Yeah.
really choose between the two of them. You know that Devontae Adams is probably going to play a few extra games. So over the course of a season, he's probably going to outproduce him because you at this point in his career, you've just kind of chalk Julio for missing 3 to 4 games. So that's almost expected at this
Yeah.
point. It seems like he just has that, Q hamstring next to his name, perennially now for the last few years.
That's so true.
But are there any and it's once you hit 30, that just happens. You see it with T.Y. Hilton too. Like that man has just been battling quad injuries for the last 3 years, and I don't think he ever really comes off the injury report.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't. I know if I was in the NFL, I wouldn't be coming off the injury report at all.
Yeah. Why practice? Talk about practice. I'm out here trying to win
Can I take a
games.
nap?
So are there any other teams that you could potentially see Julio going to, or are you just dead set on this just being a drummed up story and a slow week of football that has absolutely no backing behind it?
I think there might be some fire where the smoke is, but I don't think it's a bonfire. Miami would be another interesting pick, I think, but I hope he stays where he's at. I don't want to see him move.
Yeah, Miami would make sense too. I didn't really like that Will Fuller signing too much. Last year, Tua had one of the lowest ADOTs in the league. He is not somebody that's going to push the ball downfield. And we saw Will Fuller develop his route tree a little bit last year in Houston and start doing a little bit more than just the go route. But at the end of the day, that's still where he makes the biggest splash is downfield. And, maybe we'll see Tua take that step in year 2 and start pushing the ball. Right now, Will Fuller just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So yeah, Julio would be a great fit on really any team. Is there, 31 teams in the NFL?
I think anyone could use Julio Jones.
So this is a pretty slow week of football. We have already covered that. So we're really scraping the barrel for news here. But another piece of news this week is that the Cleveland Browns picked up Baker Mayfield's 5th-year option. No huge surprise there. But let's talk about his outlook a little bit, because now heading into 2021, the Browns look like a much better team than the Browns that were just the laughingstock of the NFL for pretty much my entire life. Now they're in the playoffs and they're winning games and they've got this high-powered offense. They've got an elite defense. But as far as Baker Mayfield goes, where does Baker Mayfield land as in your quarterback rankings for 2021?
I mean, he's one of those tier 4 guys. I mean, I'm not for a single quarterback league. I'm not super duper excited. I mean, we're talking about a Kevin Stefanski offense here, which is run first, run second, run. And why wouldn't you with the offensive line you have with their run protection they have and run blocking? And then you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, who were both RB1s last year in PPR. So for fantasy, it's not like super duper exciting in terms of Baker Mayfield. Super flex, absolutely. 2 QBs, sure. Single QB league, he's streamable option, I think. But for real football, since you insist on bringing up this real football thing, I like it for the Browns. And it's a good story. I like a good story, maybe a good comeback kid story. But again, not surprising. This isn't like mind-blowing, earth-shattering information we have, but we got to talk about it, don't we?
Yeah,
I
and
think.
he became the face of the franchise. I think it was all but guaranteed that they were gonna bring him back for year
Yeah.
5. I don't think anyone was planning on giving up on Baker, and we'll probably see the
I
stories,
mean, if they like
carrying
cut
this
him
season.
randomly and they were like, "We're done with you," he said, then that would be newsworthy. But
That would be, right, and I think that we'll probably see this year, that's when they'll start talking about an extension, and I'm sure that we're gonna see Baker Mayfield being the longtime face of the franchise for Cleveland. Something that really jumped out to me, though, was how shockingly consistent, and not good, but just consistent he's been as far as fantasy. The last 3 years, he has finished between QB 15 and QB 19 every single year. So, you know what you're getting with Baker Mayfield. I mean, he's not going to kill you in fantasy. He's not going to really help you win a bunch of weeks. But if you're looking for somebody in a super flex or a 2 QB league, he's the guy that you want because you know exactly what you're going to get. And that's going to be a mid to upper tier QB2. So I don't hate it. I think that he's got it figured out. And like we said, he looked like a good quarterback last year, but it just doesn't translate to much fantasy success when you've got Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb on that team.
for
Um,
sure, it doesn't. I mean, and again, why would you? This is a Kevin Stefanski led offense. So I don't see anything changing with Baker Mayfield moving forward. So
And I got a little bit of hope because in that final year in Minnesota, Kevin Stefanski, he had Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen both playing at an elite level. Both of those guys finished as low end wide receiver 1. So when he moved over to Cleveland and I saw Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, I was hoping that they might be able to replicate some of that. But I think that Minnesota, with the receivers that they had, they're just in a tier above what Odell and Jarvis are at this point in their careers. So I think
I'm
that was a
curious
good.
to see how much. Like, interesting you bring up Odell. Sorry to interrupt you there. I'm curious to see how much OBJ's return is going to change a little bit of that offense. So we may see a little bit difference there because don't forget he barely played at all last year because he was hurt. So I'm going to keep my eye on it. I'm not super stoked, but
So
I'm
let's
interested.
let's just riff a little bit here. How are you feeling about Odell Beckham now? I mean, he's going to be coming off of the injury. He'll be playing again next year. Is he somebody that you're eyeballing right now? I'm going to look
Yes.
up while you're talking. I'm going to look up real quickly to see what his ADP is while you talk about
I
this. Just
think it's somewhere in the third round or later from what I've seen, I think, but don't quote me on that. It could be wrong. So you look it up
he's
because now
currently
I'm
sitting
just
as
talking my butt.
wide receiver 22.
Okay.
So wide receiver 22, he's getting lumped in with guys like CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, Amari Cooper. I feel like that's kind of where he belongs, but we know that his ceiling is also much, much higher than that.
Exactly. And that is why I like it, is because if I can get him in the value that you can get him at without reaching, because I don't think he's reach worthy, it's where is he going to fall to me and can I take him? So it kind of frees up a little bit more of an opportunity to take running backs a little bit earlier and then save those tier. But you know what? It'd be really hard for me to pass on a guy like Brandon Ayuk, though. I mean, and CeeDee Lamb. That's
Yeah.
tough. That's tough.
And
So
that's
I'm curious to see what happens to his ADP as the summer goes, which another thing we'll be talking about on the 2 point stance.
exactly. And that's something where, do you think that Odell is going to rewind the clock, or do you want to put your chips in a basket for one of these newer guys that could really pop out as the next big thing, like Ayuk or CeeDee Lamb? For me personally, I'd probably lean towards the younger guys, but if I'm torn between Amari and Odell, Amari's going to give you a rock solid floor, but I could also see Odell. He got off to a slow start last year, but before the injury, he had a couple games where he popped and showed what he's capable of. So he's a very intriguing player. I still
I
haven't really
agree.
had a deep dive on him yet, but there's a lot to be said about Odell. Now, a signing that we had this week, again, scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but we got to have something to talk about. Wayne Gallman with the 49ers. And I'm low key a little bit excited about this signing, and we'll talk about it. But Wayne Gallman signed with the 49ers, and that's already a very crowded backfield. So I don't really want to ask about his specific value, but let's just try to figure out what to make of this backfield. Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr., JaMychal Hasty. Now Wayne Gallman is in the mix. Tevin Coleman's finally out of town. Breed is out of town. But who do you see coming out as the lead back? And who would you rather have on your redraft roster in 2021?
There is no lead back in San Francisco. It's just not how Shanahan works at all. But if I had to have one running back out of the entire backfield room, if you will, I think I would still rather stick with Mostert. But I really like Wayne Gallman. I really like him. So I actually like the signing for real football, and I think it's pretty exciting. I don't love it for fantasy because that does take away some touches and it takes away volume from our other guys. But I'm excited to see what he does and who he pushes out of the way. But then again, it'll be Jeff Wilson Jr. at the goal line snipering away touchdowns per usual, and we'll be like, no, and be all sad about it. And then be like, why did I draft 49ers players again that aren't George Kittle?
Yeah, I
Or
think
that's just me.
I think you've got it right. I think Raheem Mostert, I think, is going to be the lead back. I don't think there's a lot of question about that. But this is back-to-back years now that we've seen him struggle with injuries. Now he's 29 years old. I mean,
Well,
29.
he plays like he will literally if he will run through a brick wall and not even care. He's like, rah, and he busts through it, and then he gets up and keeps running, and you're like, how did you not die? Sit
And
down. Like you
and those
can take a break. It's crazy.
those players are fun to watch, but we see them consistently getting
It's
injured.
not fun to watch. It's painful. It's painful, Dave. I'm like, oh my God, I pulled
Thinking
my hamstring for you. How did you not break every bone in your body? He bounces off of people. That can't be healthy.
it's not, and that's why we've seen him in consecutive seasons now struggling with injuries and unable to play. So I really like Jeff Wilson Jr. He's a player that I think showed a lot of flashes last year, and in best ball drafts, I was just gobbling him up every single chance I can get, waiting for that inevitable injury to Raheem Mostert. But now Wayne Gallman comes in, and he's still just 26 years old. Everyone talked last year about how terrible the Giants' offensive line was. Saquon Barkley couldn't even find room to run behind that offensive line. Wayne Gallman averaged 4.3 yards per carry behind that offensive line. So I kind of like him in a weird way, and I could see him becoming the secondary option. So Wayne Gallman's somebody that I will be targeting a lot as just kind of a late round flyer.
Oh
But
yeah.
again, it's the 49ers. He can come out and have 150 yards and 3 touchdowns one week and touch the ball 3 times the next week, just like we saw all last season with Jerick McKinnon. Who knows
It's going
what's
to
going
be
to
the good
happen?
luck guessing game. I mean, that's really what it is. And that hasn't changed, nor will it change. That's just the nature of that beast. So, but I like Wayne Gallman. I think this is fun. I like watching him play.
Yeah, they're a fun team, that's for sure. And I think Gallman can definitely carve out a role for himself. Now, another piece of news, Joe Burrow told reporters that he is eyeing a week 1 return. When he first went down with that gruesome injury, everybody was saying that he was going to start the season on the pup list. Everyone was starting to push him down rankings immediately, but this is kind of promising now. We've seen some videos of him doing some light workouts, and he is saying that he's hoping to be back for week 1. So, how would you feel about Joe Burrow in 2021? Are you risking drafting him, or are you just completely fading him until you can see how that knee holds up?
To be in your early 20s again, when it was like, I am bionic and I heal so fast. Now I like trip over the stairs and I got a torn and MCL. It's bad. But okay, so Joe Burrow is interesting. I am going to watch his progress very closely before I specifically answer your question. This is called hedging, folks. I do it a lot. So I don't know exactly how I feel about Joe Burrow, but I will keep my eyes on him. Again, this is another question of what kind of a league you're in, what kind of scoring you have, if you have 2 quarterbacks, if you have a super flex. I mean, obviously in those leagues, he may be someone that I'm okay with taking. Single QB leagues, I may wait, especially if it's a smaller league. If you're talking 10 to 12 people, he may not even get drafted, or if he does, he'll get dropped. So you can pick him up when he's healthier or when there's a good matchup, things along those lines. But I'm not specifically targeting him in drafts yet. I want to have a little bit more information before I start throwing my chips in there.
Now, if this is where you're going to be hedging your bets, then I will take the role on this show as the hot take guy because I think that Joe Burrow is going to finish as a low end QB1 this year. And obviously, there's risk there. You can't
I'm going
ignore
to
the risk.
interrupt you real quick.
Yeah,
We need to talk to Taylor. Peek behind the curtain. We need like a magic drop with like a sound.
we do. We'll
Ching! We need to do that.
every time we make a hot take or a big call, just boom,
It's
confetti blow up.
boom.
We'll talk to Taylor and we'll get that set up. But
Taylor's like,
really,
I hate
so I looked at it, and obviously Burrow didn't play a full season. If you look at his overall in points per game for quarterbacks that played 10 plus games, he was QB 17. So to say that he could be a QB1, I understand why a lot of people aren't going to agree with that. But we saw it early on. I mean, everybody had eyes on Joe Burrow when he came into the league, one of the biggest prospects in quite some time, and he struggled to get up to NFL speed. You thought that he thought that he was going to be able to make those moves that worked for him in LSU, and he was just getting teed off on almost every single game. And then we saw him start to slow it down a little bit, let the game come to him. He was playing more out of the pocket, and as the season progressed, he started to look like a better quarterback every single week. I think we'll still continue to see that progression. So if he was able to string together his first 10 games at a QB 17 average, I'd be shocked if he can't improve from there. That being
I
said,
like
if
it.
I'm yeah, and if I'm in a draft right now, though, I'm not putting all of my chips in Joe Burrow, I'm going to draft him, and then I'm going to try to pair him up with somebody like Kirk Cousins, Cam Newton, somebody else where I can use him as a streaming option. But I think that Joe
Not
Burrow
Cam
has
Newton.
all.
No Cam Newton. Dave, we're going to have an intervention.
All right,
No
why
Cam
is this?
Newton. No
What's
Cam
wrong with
Newton.
Cam Newton? What
Don't
am I
do it.
missing?
Don't do it. Don't put yourself through this heartache and this
Ah,
stress. Avoid Cam Newton. Stay away from it.
I like it. You know, a lot of people are talking about Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, that they're going to take over as these, pass catching monsters, going to be the next Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski. I don't see it. A lot of what
No.
people aren't pointing out is that Jonnu Smith is probably the best run blocking tight end in the league. Hunter Henry is a great run blocker himself. So we saw it last year. Cam Newton was what, third in the league in rushing touchdowns? I don't see that changing this year. I think Cam Newton is still going to
Mm.
get a lot of rushing opportunities, and that rushing upside gives him a very safe floor. So Cam Newton, I
Go for
understand
Ryan
there's a lot
Tannehill.
of people.
Stay away from Cam Newton. Stay away from Cam Newton. This will probably come back and bite me in the butt. Like, it'll be October and Cam Newton's QB1, and they're like, remember when you said that, Lauren? I'm like, whatever. I
And
remember. Not
it
proud
can
of it.
happen, but they did a lot to beef up that offense. And I don't think that they're suddenly going to turn into this high flying, pass heavy offense. I think that a lot of what they did is built, more of an opportunity for them to do what they do best, which is run the ball. They've got a good offensive line. Now they've got two of the best run blocking tight ends in the league. I think that Cam Newton is a sneaky sleeper. So also Kirk Cousins, kind of the complete opposite of Cam Newton. He's going to give you that low, safe week to week floor. So I kind of like thinking of, doing that. If you're reaching for that late or you're waiting on that late round quarterback, get some guys that are just polar opposites. Get one guy that's the big risk, high ceiling, and then get one guy that's safe floor and see which one works out over the course.
That's
of
not named Cam Newton.
Not named Cam Newton. So let's talk about another very polarizing, high upside, rushing Konami type quarterback. There was a lot of noise surrounding Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni this week. He had a press conference, and I think that a lot was made about nothing personally, but he did not commit to Jalen Hurts as the starter in 2021. Do you think that's a story worth watching, or is this, again, just a case of a slow week of news?
This is not a story. It would have been a story if he came out like, Jalen Hurts is our QB1, deal with it. That would have been a story, but it's not. It's like, we're not going to name anyone our starter. Wink, wink. I mean, come on. It's okay. Go for it. Whatever. Yeah. I don't really read too much into this. New head coach trying to get some motivation into his guys, bring that competitive, go get them sport mentality into the locker room. I don't know, but this didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I think that that's what you've got to say. I mean, they just went out and
Right.
brought in a veteran, and you can't go out and especially after some of the struggles he had. But a big thing was that the team president just about a month ago said that we are committed to Jalen Hurts as the starter, and he told everybody in the organization to start building a game plan around having Jalen Hurts as the starter, and that came from the tip top of the
Yeah.
organization. So I think this was Sirianni, just like you said, trying the best to keep his team motivated.
We don't know who the starter is going to be.
Yeah, it might be Joe Flacco because he's been so great these last few
So
years.
great.
But
What?
so how are you feeling about Jalen Hurts? Is he somebody that you're going out and targeting in drafts? I can tell you I am. I'll throw another hot take in here once you're done talking. I love Jalen Hurts. How are you feeling about him next year?
Why do I look like such the conservative person in this 2-point stance we have going here? No, I'm not going out and actively targeting him. But will I swoop him up off the waiver wire for a really good, juicy matchup? You betcha. You betcha. I'll do
I
that.
I got some bad news for you, Lauren. I don't think you're going to be able to get him off the waiver wire. I
That's
think that
probably
he
true
is
too.
going, and I think because you saw it last year with Kyler Murray, he was the young rushing upside quarterback that everybody was sold on, and he got drafted late and paid off. The year before was Lamar Jackson. So I think because of that trend that weeve seen now for two
Those are some
consecutive
big
years,
names to be comparing senior Jalen Hurts to. Ooh,
and I
this
think
is spicy. Caliente.
And I think that that's going to cause people because everybody wants to capture that magic. If you had Lamar Jackson 2 years ago, you probably won your league. If you had Kyler Murray last year, it probably helped you get pretty far in the playoffs. Although,
Okay, you're talking me into it. You're talking me into it.
so here I've got one more thing for you. I looked at his rushing stats per game, and granted, it was a very small sample size, just 4 starts. But if you took his rushing touchdowns and rushing yards from that game, extrapolate them over an entire 16-game season, it's equivalent to 43 passing touchdowns. We know that rushing yards are worth more than passing yards. We know that rushing touchdowns are worth more than passing touchdowns. So he was on pace for over 1,000 yards rushing, and I mean that alone. I would
Hmm.
much rather prefer somebody like Jalen Hurts, who's going to give you that rushing floor, or Cam Newton, who we were just talking about a little bit, than somebody like Kirk Cousins, who you're really relying on to throw 3 touchdowns a week in order to have a big game. So I have Jalen Hurts right now as my QB7.
Wow. That's
I
crazy.
I had him as my QB7 before the Carson Wentz trade. I was that certain that they were going to be committed to getting rid of him,
Wow.
and
If
I
the
think that
Eagles
he is
can beef up their offensive line, I could buy into it. Not as high as 7, but
yeah,
according to Pro Football Focus, they had the Eagles O line at I think 19th
mhm,
from last year. Not very good. Carson Wentz himself was sacked 50 times, and he didn't even play all 16 games. So I think he needs a little bit more protection before I buy into that. Otherwise, we're going to look at a hurt Jalen Hurts. That sounded very repetitive, but you know what I
hurt
mean.
Jalen Hurts.
So I know, yeah, it's like it hurts not so good when that happens. So yeah, I can see that he could have monster weeks because we saw that also when he, like you said, it was a small sample size, but he had I think one for sure, maybe 2
It
really
was
good weeks that were
55 points or
impressive.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, something like
that
that. I
was his
can't
first
remember.
start.
Right? Which seemed to be a trend last year because Justin Herbert did the same thing. They were like, oh, by the way, after the coin toss, oh, you're going to go play Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Here you go. Get in.
And Marcus Mariota did it too. When Derek Carr went
What?
out with that early groin injury, Marcus Mariota stepped in and had a great game. You saw a lot of guys come in unexpected relief and just
Yeah,
crush it last year. But yeah, something about Jalen Hurts is just screaming breakout to me. I'm a little worried about his long term, and we're focusing on redraft on this show. But long term,
right.
I don't know because he's very prone to turnovers. He fumbled the ball a lot. He had the most. I forget how PFF worded it. I believe it was turnover worthy throws where they weren't interceptions, but they could have been
Mm-hmm.
interceptions,
They
dropped
should have been.
interceptions,
Yeah.
and he had the most of any quarterback per play.
He's
So
young too, so that doesn't surprise me.
I think that a full offseason that isn't shortened because of COVID, hopefully we get a full offseason this year.
Like a normal
Commitment to
year, like a normal boy, Pinocchio. Let's go. I'm so ready for like some normalcy.
yeah.
It'd be
And
so
I think
nice.
come Thursday, then we're really going to be into the NFL season. Players will be drafted. We're going to know who's going to play where. That's when we'll finally start to have some fun. But yeah, something about Jalen Hurts just screams breakout to me. That rushing
I will
upside,
remember.
he's
You're
so
talking me into
talented.
this now, Dave. And if it doesn't come to fruition, I'm going to be angry.
And you have every right to be. Like I said, I'm here for the hot takes, and that's why we've got this 2 point stance. You're going to take yours, I'll take mine, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle.
It works
So
so well.
it
Yes,
does.
I got the right side this time. Also,
It's
peek behind the curtain. StreamYard is different, so I frequently go to the wrong side. So if you see me like, yeah, it will happen a lot. Just
I have to make like a mental
bear with
note in my
me.
head. I'm like, all right,
Oh, I
football
do, and I
helmet
still
over my right
forget.
shoulder, this hand's here, and yeah, it's
Yes.
not an easy thing to do. Um, but I think there's something happening in just a few days that it would be kind of crazy if we didn't talk about, right?
Oh my God, what is it? My birthday?
Is that coming up? If so, happy
No, it's
birthday.
not.
Oh,
It's not
well,
at all.
but we've got the draft on Thursday night, and we haven't
Oh
mentioned the draft
yeah.
outside of that opening talk about who the 49ers are going to take it 3. We haven't really talked about the draft too much, and it's not something I want to get too deep into because everybody's talking about the draft right now, and frankly I'm kind of exhausted by the draft, and we're not even there yet. I went to bat on Twitter. I spent like my last 48 hours telling everybody that Robert Tunyon was going to outperform his ADP because I'm so sick of draft talk that I'm rather talk about low end tight end ones for 2 days straight. But we do need to talk about it a little bit. There's a lot of talk about how deep this wide receiver class is, but outside of Jamar Chase, there doesn't really seem to be any elite standouts. It seems like all of these receivers are just going to make like good wide receiver twos. So looking at the team needs that some of the teams have right now, what teams could you see realistically drafting a wide receiver that can make an instant impact in 2021 fantasy leagues?
Well, I like Devontae Smith too. So I think Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith, 2 pretty solid wide receivers. Rondale Moore also, I think, is sneakily very good. But there is a couple. We already mentioned some of them. Miami, definitely. Lions, for sure. Panthers just got rid of Curtis Samuel. I know they've got DJ Moore there still, but Panthers could also use some more offensive weapons too, especially if Sam Darnold's going to be their quarterback. Eagles, hello, Eagles need people as well. Patriots, I know they have their 2 tight ends. They need some wide receivers. The Raiders could use wide receivers. The Titans could use some wide receivers now that they don't have Corey Davis and they need a solid wide receiver too for A.J. Brown. I mean, the need is not as large as the supply. Or no, the need is larger than the supply, I should say.
It
I know
absolutely is.
economics. I don't.
I just pray that they don't take a first round receiver. The Eagles, that is, because the Eagles, it seems like that has just been like one of the worst curses.
Devontae Smith, let's go.
He could be the curse breaker, but it has not fared well so far for first round wide receivers that the Eagles have taken. I'll take the obvious one. I feel like whoever gets drafted by the Lions is going to be an elite player right now. They lost Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones, which leaves well, not that Kenny Galladay was getting targets last year, but still leaves a huge gap on the depth chart. Right now, Quintez Cephas is their wide receiver one. Like, you look on the depth chart, the casual football fan doesn't even know who Quintez Cephas is, and he's their current wide receiver one.
Yeah.
So I could
it's
see them
nuts.
with that 7 pick taking Devontae Smith, maybe Jalen Waddle, maybe Jamar Chase if he's still there.
Oh, Jalen Waddle. Forgot about Jalen Waddle.
Ugh. And anybody that goes, if one of those guys goes to the Lions, there's no reason that they can't see 130, 140 targets as a rookie, which would
the volume alone is worth it.
And, you know, TJ Hawkinson right now, I guess you could say that maybe he's the number one pass catching option. But as far as receivers go, I think if they take anybody at 7, they instantly overtake Quintez Cephas. And then you were
I agree.
about the Titans too. I think the Titans, they're sitting at 22 right now. So they don't have to, and that's where things get a little weird with the Lions. Spending the 7th pick on a receiver is a lot of draft capital. When they have other positions that they need to address. I think the Titans,
except running back, they don't need any more running backs.
They do not need any more running backs. Yeah, Jamal Williams, I think he's going to see a hefty amount of touches. You know, DeAndre Swift is there to be the bell cow. But you mentioned the Titans too, and that's a team that I think sitting at 22 with that pick, anybody that they take, I think also is going to be fantasy relevant as a rookie. With Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis both gone, that just leaves a huge hole for targets. So I'd really like to see one of these rookies go there. You know, maybe I feel like just about anybody they take that gets to play opposite AJ Brown is going to be able to make an impact.
So I don't know if anyone's heard me say this before, just totally off topic. Well, not really, since I'm talking about AJ Brown. But AJ Brown, he's on a commercial and he's talking to Devontae Smith and I really love that ad series, by the way. But like, I could literally just sit down and watch AJ Brown talk. He's so happy and he always has a big smile on his face. His eyes are always bright. He just looks like he's full of joy. Just be like, the world is right when AJ Brown talks because everyone's just happy. I'm like, you are cool. It's totally not on fantasy topic, but I love AJ Brown.
You took the word right out of my mouth. Cool. Like if you had to if there were like cool power rankings in the NFL, AJ Brown would be sitting right up on.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody in the league.
He's like sunshine.
Yeah, AJ Brown's a cool guy. I selfishly, I almost don't want the Titans to draft a wide receiver just so we can see AJ Brown break the target record and see 205 or more targets next year because the way that depth chart is set up right now, it could happen. But more likely than not, they're going to end up taking a wide receiver. I
hope so. I think it works better for AJ Brown if he has a compliment.
Yeah, and then the Vikings, they're set right now, but we already talked about the Lions, but really the entire NFC North. The Bears are also desperate right now for a number 2.
Oh yeah,
I love Darnell Mooney. He was great, but kind of similar to what we were saying about Tua and Will Fuller, just not really being a good match. That's kind of how I feel about Darnell Mooney and Andy Dalton. We saw it last year where Darnell Mooney was just consistently blowing the top off the defense, getting wide open, and then nobody can get the ball to him. I don't think that Andy Dalton has that arm to hit him 50, 55 yards downfield, which is where he's able to get open and get space. And then the Packers, obviously, desperate for a wide receiver. I feel like last year, after they just completely screwed over Aaron Rodgers by addressing exactly what the team needed, it would shock me if they don't take a wide receiver this year. But at the same time, it wouldn't really shock me because they're the Packers. Yeah. And it seems like every year they do exactly what you're not supposed to do in the draft. And then 3 years later, you look back at it and you're like, oh, that move actually kind of made sense. So we might see something like that again this year. Who knows?
I hope they take a wide receiver, but who knows?
Now, something that was really shocking in the 2020 season was how running backs were able to come in and just immediately make an impact. You know, we had this shortened preseason where everyone was saying, these rookies, they're going to struggle to get up to NFL speed. And I was buying into that. And then we had like 8 guys come out the gate. And it's like, wow, they are immediate bell cows. They're already fantasy relevant. And that was arguably the most impressive rookie running back class that I've ever seen in my life. So, do you see that happening again in 2021? Like, is this just a sign of how the NFL is changing, that rookie running backs and young running backs are going to be the new thing? Or do you think that 2020 was a bit fluky?
I think anything about 2020 was fluky. It was like, I don't know, it was like the win of the rookies that year. For it just seems like I'm not 100% sold that rookies are going to come in and make a huge statement like they did last year. Let's put it that way. However, if your name is Najee Harris, then yes, you are going to make an immediate impact, which I hope he goes to the Steelers, by the way. Anyway, yeah, but wasn't there news coming out about Travis Etienne? What was that again?
The Buffalo Bills are hoping that they can
No,
take their first round pick.
bad,
I saw that.
bad, 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 bad. I will
It
not
would
be
be.
happy if Travis Etienne goes to the Bills.
I
No,
don't think
for
anybody will.
fantasy, stinky. It's
Yeah, that
gross.
is. I tweeted that out yesterday, and it was an honest question. I said, I don't know if a rookie running back going to the Bills is the best or the worst landing spot, and I genuinely don't. I mean, we thought last year it was going to be great for Zach Moss. 2 years ago, we thought it was going to be great for Devin Singletary. It seems like all that team is missing is a very good running back, and I wanted to see Chris Carson go there. I wanted to see Aaron Jones go there, and if they end up getting Najee Harris or Travis Etienne, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if it's like
Mm,
finally they got their RB1 and let's do it for fantasy, or if it's just going to be another running back prospect that is going to flounder there. I really
I don't
don't know
like
what to
it.
expect with Buffalo. But as far as last year, I think that 2020, like you said, very fluky. I think that was an outlier. I don't see anything like that happening this year. And I think because of that 2020 season, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javante Williams, their ADPs are going to be very inflated because everybody's going to want to get that next big thing. Evan Silva with Establish the Run, a guy that I respect more than just about anybody in the industry, he came out yesterday and said that this 2021 running back class is the worst that he has ever seen.
Ooh,
Yeah,
speaking of
so
spicy.
so I will take that to heart a little bit when I'm going into this and try not to go chasing what was lightning in a bottle last year, I believe. So let's talk about this a little bit though. After we just completely crapped all over the 2021 running back class, what team could you see a running back landing on that could be fantasy relevant in 2021?
Well, I think I already pulled the cat out of that bag a little early, but Pittsburgh Steelers. I would love for them to have a solid run game. I don't think Betty Snell's it. They need also a better offensive line, and some run blocking would be very helpful. But I would like to see a solid, stout running back game in Pittsburgh. I think it's one of the pieces that they're missing. I mean, I know a lot of people want to get rid of Big Ben too, so start with the running back though. That's where I really want to see a good running back for fantasy.
So you're not buying into Caleb Lodge, is what I'm hearing right now. You don't think
No.
Caleb Lodge? No,
I
as you
mean,
probably shouldn't.
a little. I mean, he has flashes. I mean, he did a lot better than he has ever when he was under Adam Gase. Thank God he got out from underneath that man. And he did show some flashes from what we saw from last year, which was okay, but not as the main primary guy. No.
Yeah, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to shake that reputation that he got for that time in Miami, where
It's
he was
Adam
seeing a
Gase's
lot
fault
of
too.
volume. And what he averaged, was it less than 2 yards per carry? I
I
mean,
think it was
whatever
less
it
than
was,
one. I think it
whatever
was
it
less
was,
than one.
it was
So
just
bad.
hilariously awful. And I don't know if he's
Awful.
ever really going to be able to shake that. So kind of, I weirdly like Balaj a little
Oh, I
bit,
do too.
but I think that he probably is better suited as a number two guy. So I could see them
Yeah.
drafting somebody. Like I said, I don't know how to feel if Buffalo goes out and gets a running back. Like it's something that I've thought so hard about, and I literally cannot come to any sort of conclusion about what to expect with this Buffalo team. I think that ETN makes a lot more sense than Zach Moss and Singletary. He can catch the ball, do a little bit more in open space. So I do like the idea of him, but it's kind of one of those like, you know, what's the saying? Shame me once or burn me once, shame on
Yeah.
you. Like, how many times
Yeah.
do I have to continue to
Fool
get
me
burned by the
once,
Buffalo
shame on
Bill?
you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah. So
Fool me thrice, you're dead to me. I just added
exactly.
that on
Yeah.
at
And
the
this
end.
this would be number three if because I was on the Singletary hype train, I was on the Moss hype train. I don't know if I could do it if they take ETN again.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do it again either. I mean, I could see the argument for it, and if somebody else wants to take that risk, go for it. I don't know if I have the stones to do that. I'm not sure if that's going to be within my wheelhouse of trying to get burned again. So we'll see.
So let's throw one other name out there because the Miami Dolphins, it seemed like they were a lot to take a running back early on. Everyone was saying that Najee Harris might be going there. And then they went out and signed Malcolm Brown. Do you think that Malcolm Brown is somebody that's really going to, you know, alter the value of a running back coming in? Or do you think he's just kind of a depth add there and you think that they could still draft a rookie that could take over Malcolm Brown on the depth chart?
I could see them signing a rookie with Malcolm Brown on there as a depth chart piece, but Malcolm Brown has a very persnickety way of hanging around and really being obnoxious by running back by committee. We saw that with the Rams. So I don't know. I'm curious about that. But also don't forget there's still let's see, Patrick Laird is still there, but he's more their like gadgety,
Miles
pass catching
Gaskin,
running back. Miles Gaskin is still there.
Salvon
Salvon
Ahmed.
Ahmed is still there. So that's a very crowded backfield. So I would be surprised if they signed a running back, but then not surprised because this is the NFL and weird things happen. So I'm not sure. I think it's going to depend. What we find out after the draft is going to kind of dictate, in my opinion, what Miami is thinking for 2021. And this could be a hot mess avoiding our BBC for 2021 for fantasy.
So let's
Hope
throw
not, though.
one more team out there, and I'm not sure if they're even going to draft a running back, but how about the Cardinals? It seemed like Kenyon Drake was, or no, I'm sorry, not Kenyon Drake. Chase Edmonds was getting all of this hype as a potential
Yeah.
breakout. Then James Conner went in there and just completely, just ruined that idea. But do you think that they could still draft a guy that would end up making a role there, or do you think that James Conner and has just completely squashed that as well?
I don't know if I agree with completely squashed because James Conner is having a very hard time staying healthy full 16 games. So no, I would not be surprised if they signed a running back. Honestly,
Yeah,
I wouldn't. Yeah.
I,
I
I
could see that happening.
The one thing that makes the Cardinals draft a little bit interesting, they've got a late first round pick, they've got a mid second round pick, and then they have no third round pick at all. So they'd have to use one of those first two picks on a running back. And if they don't, they're waiting until I think it's like pick 118 or something like that. They're waiting until the fourth round before they can
Oh,
select anybody else. So they'd have to use one of their top two picks on a running back, or they're probably going to strike out on running backs altogether. So
right.
that's something to keep an eye on. And I think that's why James Conner was brought in. Just he's a cheaper option than the draft capital they'd have to use considering their lack of. But let's get to the final question here. We started off the show talking about Kyle Pitts, and we're going to end talking about Kyle Pitts. There's been a lot of talk about him coming into the league and just taking over. People are already slotting him in as the tight end 4 behind the big 3. You got Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, and then it seems like everybody's just putting Pitts firmly
Yeah.
as the tight end 4. I don't know if that's something that I can completely get behind. We haven't seen a lot of first round tight ends fare too well as rookies. Do you think that Kyle Pitts is going to change the trend here?
Change the trend? No. Shake the trend? Maybe. So Kyle Pitts is interesting because he's not really a traditional tight end. He's a lot more like a wide receiver. So it's really going to depend on where he lands. Is that a possibility? Yeah, I think with him it is because he is such an athletic, gifted freak of nature when it comes to football that it would not surprise me if he does end up being, well, I say a tier 1 tight end. It's like kind of, there's, like you said, the big 3 and then everybody else. But it wouldn't surprise me if he really did take off and do a very, very good job in his freshman year, if you will. But it's just going to depend on where he goes. Like I'd love to see him in some place like Atlanta if they get rid of their wide receiver 1. That would be awesome. I mean, I know they still have Hayden Hurst, but that is a possibility that you can play around with Calvin Ridley still there. There's lots of options, I think, but it's going to depend on his landing spot. Because again, if he goes to the 49ers, I'm not happy about that. Or any other team of that nature where they already have somebody who's legit and established, that is not going to be okay. But again, he's a wide receiver pretty much except for by title. So I think he can. But I don't think he's going to change the trend for forever, but I think he might shirk it.
I get it. And you already alluded to it a little bit. Like once you get past that first 3, there just isn't really that much happening. And
Yeah.
it's funny hearing like how defensive people get like talking about these mid-tier tight ends when at the end of the day, the margins between every tight end that aren't Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller are so slim that it's almost a moot point even trying to discuss it. So I think that if you're unable to get one of those first 3 guys, you should be swinging for the floor. Obviously, guys like TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, they're probably going to offer you a safer
Logan
floor.
Thomas is someone I'm targeting in drafts.
Yeah, Logan Thomas is another one. And with Fitzpatrick there, it changes it a little bit. Fitzpatrick doesn't love throwing to his tight ends, but yeah, he's somebody who solidified his role in the offense last year. But for me personally, if I strike out on those big 3, what I'm trying to draft for is ceiling. And I think the guys that offer that ceiling are Kyle Pitts. I think Robert Tunyon, he's got a chance to carve out a huge role and offer tremendous upside. But you shouldn't ignore the risk either. There's only one tight end in NFL history that has had more than 900 receiving yards as a rookie, and you've got to go back to 1961. It was
Oh,
Mike Ditka.
geez.
Mike Ditka is the only
Really?
tight end ever to have more than 900 yards as a rookie, and that was
Wow.
60 years ago. So it's not that I don't think that Pitts can be a great player, but I do worry a little bit about that rookie year production. And because we're talking about redraft here, all we're talking about is what he's going to do in 2021. So he's got a lot of talent, but I think that realistically, I'd probably wait till a little bit later in the draft to reach for my tight end.
Yeah,
Now,
and we have a comment here from RF
yeah,
Fantasy. He was asking, is he going to be better than Mark Andrews? That is a tough one because Mark Andrews had a very disappointing year last year. I don't know. I see them neck and neck. I would not be surprised if those two are just right behind each other in the rankings at the end of 2021. But I do think that whereas Mark Andrews is more of the big body, maybe help block as a tight end, Kyle Pitts is more of the receiver type.
mhm.
So there is an opportunity for Kyle Pitts to finish better than Mark Andrews if he goes to the right place, of course.
And the one thing I think Mark Andrews definitely has working in his favor is he's pretty much like the number one pass catching option. I think, Marquise Brown saw more targets than him, but you see it when Lamar Jackson's in a pinch, all he's doing is looking for Mark Andrews because he
Especially in the
knows that
red zone, man. Love
in the
it.
red zone. Yeah, and really, I mean, that's his guy. Like when he needs somebody to go up and when he's under pressure, he's just throwing the ball up to Mark Andrews, knowing that he can come down with it, which is exactly why I wanted to see Kenny Galladay in Baltimore and exactly why I want to
That's
see
true.
Julio Jones in Baltimore. I think he needs another big weapon. The receivers that they built there with Devin Duvernay and Marquise Brown and Willie Snead, they don't have big receivers. They've got these small guys that require a
Mhm.
very accurate passer. And I think they need to kind of take the approach that Carolina did with Cam Newton early in his career, where it's let's just get a bunch of big, huge bodies that have a catch radius the size of a barn door
Like
and just let
Travis
him throw it in
Benjamin
there. Yeah, and just put it in their
or Calvin
general
Benjamin. The
Calvin
Benjamins.
Benjamin. Calvin
Calvin
Benjamin, yeah.
Benjamin.
Calvin Benjamin, Devin Funchess. They did it with a few guys, Greg Olson, but it's like just have that huge body where he doesn't need to pinpoint it and put it right on the money. Just throw it in the general vicinity, let him come down with the jump ball. Those are the types of receivers that I think will help Lamar Jackson get to that next level. The don't even get me started on the Baltimore personnel because I can rant and rave about that for an hour. It really makes me kind of upset what they're doing over there. But overall, great first show. And like I said, we are going to finish off
Oh
every
my God,
single
is it an
show.
hour? It's been an hour already.
Time time
What?
flies when you're having fun. This
That's
is this is a fun
crazy.
show. So, like I said, we are going to wrap up every show by highlighting somebody in what we are calling directly from Joe Bryan. He asked us to call this the Footballguys Spotlight. And I love this idea just because when I was new in the industry, like I said, I reached out to you and you helped me a little bit. I had other guys that really kind of took me under their wing. And it makes it a lot easier in the industry when people are helping point attention to you. So, the guy that I want to highlight today is a good friend of mine, but really somebody who's just doing a lot in the industry as well. Corey Spala. You can find him on Twitter at Corey Spala. That's CoreySpala. And he's just one of the most innovative and creative people that I've seen in this space. Rather than your typical show host or commissioner, he's always looking for ways to make the experience just more submersive for the guests that are watching or for the guests that are on the show and interactive for the audience. He's got this weekly show that I've been on twice now and it's an absolute blast. What you do is you go on and you draft a team starting from zero. So you pick the team you want, you pick the franchise you want, and you draft a team, and then you simulate an entire Madden season to see how you've done. He's gotten great results from that, had some awesome guests on there, and now he's actually switching it up to baseball one where he's going to be running it through the show instead of Madden. So you can check that out as well. And then he also commissions a league that I'm in that is one of the funniest, weirdest leagues that I've been in where we allowed all 12 people to come up with one rule to deem how this league goes, and we're calling it the Chaos League. But it's everything from in our startup, you couldn't draft two of the same positions back to back. So if you took a quarterback in the first round, you couldn't take a quarterback in the second round. We've got another rule where after you beat somebody in the week, you're allowed to steal any player off of their roster.
I
So it's
love
just
that rule.
and we have 12 full rules. I will share the entire rule list on Twitter for all of our followers to see, but it is just a really fun thing that he's doing. So I want to highlight Corey Spotlight today on the Footballguys Spotlight. An awesome guy. You should go check him out immediately. But thank you so much for tuning in. Lauren, before we sign off, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter? And if you have anything fun that you're working on right now that you want to plug, now would be the time to do that.
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm really bad at Instagram. I'm trying to learn, I promise. But it's at Stepmom Lauren. You guys can find all of my work on my website, stepmomlauren.com. So yeah, we're just coming out with preseason stuff until the craziness of the draft, which I'm super duper excited about because it's like getting real. Real
Yeah,
football is getting real. I'm so
it
excited.
is. It is coming up quick, and I can't wait to just have it so we can stop with the mock drafts. If I have to read one more mock draft, I think my head might explode. I
I
am Dave
know.
Kluge. You can find me at Dave Kluge _FF. That's DAVEKLUGE _FF. Thank you so much for tuning into Football Guys' newest show, 2 Point Stance. You can find us here every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern on Periscope, bringing the show live to you. And then you can also find it on our YouTube page at 8 p.m. Eastern, which is youtube.com/Football Guys TV. So be sure to go on there and subscribe, where we also have our Dynasty newsletter show. We've got the Audible show. We've got the Power Grid. We've got the Dynasty show with Chad and Jordan. And we are going to keep bringing you more and more shows all off season until we just have something that you won't even need to watch TV. You can just watch Football Guys TV all the time. So youtube.com/Football Guys TV. Be sure to check it out. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day.